She is useful to me, Dante said, calm enough for the whole table to hear. But she will never be my real wife. Evelyn stood only a few steps behind him, frozen inside the Romano Foundation ballroom. Around her, champagne glasses lifted, diamonds flashed, and dangerous men smiled as if nothing had happened. But for Evelyn, that sentence split the night open. 2 years of loyalty, fear, patience, and quiet hope collapsed in one breath. She had loved a man who could use her name, wear her devotion, sleep beside her every night, and still deny her as if she were only part of his business. Even the way she looked suddenly felt like proof. The blue silk dress, the diamond collar, the perfect hair pinned away from her face, none of it belonged to her. Dante's stylist had chosen every piece so she could stand beside him like a polished symbol of power. For 2 years, Evelyn had played the perfect underworld wife so well that she had almost forgotten the woman underneath. She set her untouched glass on a passing tray and moved through the gala with a smile that barely held. No one stopped her. No one noticed she was breaking. Then Margaret's sharp voice cut through the noise. Margaret approached with the soft cruelty of someone who never raised her voice because she did not need to. When Evelyn admitted Dante's stylist had chosen the dress, Margaret smiled as if she had been waiting for that answer. So you don't even choose what you wear. It was a small sentence, but it landed exactly where Evelyn was already bleeding. She turned away before her face could betray her, and walked past wealthy guests who treated marriage, loyalty and love like items on a contract. She reached the empty terrace above Manhattan, gripped the cold stone railing, and let the winter air hit her face hard enough to keep her standing. Dante's words would not stop repeating. Useful, but never real. She had survived 2 years by calling his control protection and his rare softness love. Now the lie felt thin enough to tear. Behind her, the terrace door opened. Dante's heavy jacket settled over her shoulders, carrying smoke, expensive cologne, and the familiar weight of him. He stood close enough to take up the air around her, but still somehow unreachable. Evelyn did not turn. The city glittered below, like nothing in the world had changed. That made it worse. Her whole life had cracked, and Manhattan kept shining. His voice was smooth when he asked if something had happened. Evelyn gave the answer tired people give when the truth is too large to carry. I'm fine. Looking at him hurt. His gray eyes could read rival bosses, hidden threats, false smiles, and loaded rooms. But he could not see his own wife falling apart in front of him. Or maybe he saw it and did not know what to do with it. He searched her face as if looking for a problem he could control, not a wound he had caused. When she asked to go home, his mask slipped for half a second. Then it returned. Stay, he said. For Dante, appearances always came first. A wife leaving early would invite questions, and questions were weaknesses. Evelyn's pain mattered only if it threatened his image. She pushed the jacket back into his hands and walked out before he could order her again. Behind her, the ballroom began to whisper about the boss' unhappy wife. The ride home was silent and colder than the street. Their penthouse did not welcome her. It never had. It was a beautiful museum of marble, glass and control. Evelyn let the blue dress fall to the floor and scrubbed the makeup from her face until her skin burned. The woman in the mirror still looked like a stranger. She stared at her reflection and saw how much of herself had disappeared. The bright, stubborn girl she used to be had been worn down one compromise at a time. She crawled into her side of the enormous bed and lay there without sleeping. Around 2 a.m, the front door clicked open. She knew Dante's movements by sound. Measured footsteps. A glass lifted from the bar. Ice cracking. The balcony door sliding open. The slow burn of a cigarette. When he finally opened the bedroom door, she closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. It was a lonely kind of theater, sharing a bed with someone who had never truly let her in. Dante stood in the doorway for a long moment. Evelyn felt his gaze on her like a hand she did not want. He studied her as if she were another situation that needed assessment. Then he closed the door and walked away. She stared into the dark until morning. Their routine began with the same hard precision as always. Normally she would make breakfast, fix his tie, and prove she still had a place in his world. Today she could not move. She listened to him dress for another day of blood, money, and negotiations. When he asked if she was sick, the question almost made her laugh. Evelyn lay still, staring at a pale water stain on the ceiling Dante had ignored for 6 months. The man controlled half the city. Yet he had never noticed the crack above his own bed. When he told her to get up for an 8 o'clock meeting, she corrected him quietly. The silence that followed was thick. He looked at her as if she had become unpredictable after he left. She caught her reflection in the espresso machine. Hollow eyes, bare face. Someone else's life wrapped around her shoulders. Her phone buzzed with shallow acquaintances hunting for gossip. She turned it over and let the screen go dark. A bitter thought rose in her mind. The marriage may have been a fraud. But at least the catering was excellent. It was an ugly little joke. The kind people make when pain has nowhere else to go. She looked around the penthouse and finally saw it clearly. Every velvet chair. Every expensive painting. Every polished surface served the Dante Moretti image. She had not been living there. She had been displayed there. So her rebellion began quietly. She stopped fixing his tie. She stopped waiting up. She stopped asking about his day. She stopped pretending his silence was depth. Something in her had closed. And Dante noticed. A man does not build a criminal empire by missing changes in the room. Dante noticed the untouched breakfast. The closed bedroom door. The way she moved around him without touching him. One night, lit by the cold glow of his laptop, he said, "You're not fine." He sounded as if he were diagnosing a security breach. For the first time, Evelyn did not soften herself. "What am I to you?" she asked. The question hit him harder than she expected. His face went still, but his eyes flashed with something close to shock. She had broken the pattern. She had stopped being quiet. She left him sitting alone in the dark, and something between them tore open. Then, just as she stood on the edge of a decision, her phone rang. A publishing house in Boston was returning a call she had made months earlier. Back when escape was still only a fantasy whispered to herself at midnight. Boston meant distance. No handlers. No blood money. No men watching doors for Dante's enemies. No Moretti name wrapped around her throat. Just Evelyn. The thought terrified her so badly, she almost hung up. But fear was not enough to stop her anymore. "Are you still there, Mrs. Moretti?" the woman asked. Evelyn swallowed. Yes. Boston meant a small apartment in a neighborhood Dante would never choose. It meant cheap furniture, train noise, and waking up without asking permission to breathe. She looked around the penthouse and admitted what she had spent years avoiding. She had built nothing here. Only closets full of clothes she did not choose and a role she no longer wanted. Before fear could freeze her, she opened her laptop. Boston rentals, budgets, job details. For 2 weeks, she lived a double life, quietly moving pieces of herself beyond Dante's reach. Then Serena returned and changed the temperature of the room. Evelyn was enduring another polished dinner when she heard the whisper. Serena was back from Milan. The woman everyone had once expected Dante to marry. Evelyn kept her smile in place, but something inside her tightened. Serena walked in with the ease of someone born into this world. "Charmed," she said, offering a flawless hand. "I've heard so much about you." Evelyn's smile thinned. "Funny, I haven't heard a single thing about you." Serena's amusement darkened. Dante did not move, but Evelyn saw his eyes shift. Serena claimed she and Dante were ancient history, but Evelyn saw the things left unsaid. The comfort in Serena's posture. The old familiarity in the way Dante's shoulders eased near her. The calm he never allowed Evelyn to have. That night, Evelyn booked a one-way ticket to Boston and hid the confirmation in a folder called Recipes, a place Dante would never bother to open. She began the painful work of disappearing from her own life, but secrecy makes people careless. 3 weeks before she was supposed to leave, she forgot one small thing. The closet door stayed cracked while the shower ran. She stepped out of the steam and stopped cold. Dante stood in the center of the bedroom, holding one of her folded sweaters. Behind him, the open closet told the rest of the story. Her packed clothes, her hidden bag, her escape, exposed. His voice was quiet when he asked how long she had been planning to leave him. He did not yell. He did not need to. The room tightened around them anyway. Since the gala, she whispered. He set the sweater down with terrible care, as if moving too fast might make the truth real. But it was already real. What do you call packing in secret? Dante demanded. Evelyn's answer came before she could soften it. Surviving. The word stunned them both. She sat on the edge of the bed because her legs were shaking. At the gala. I heard you. His face changed. I heard you say I was useful. But I would never be your real wife. The words broke on the way out. Dante looked as if someone had struck him. This man who could make entire rooms obey suddenly had no defense against his own sentence. So tell me, Evelyn said, what am I to you? You are my wife, Dante said, but it sounded like a title, not an answer. A legal role, a useful word, something he could use when it suited him. Evelyn stared at him through a blur of pain. Do you love me? His silence moved through the room like smoke. She gave a broken laugh and went back to packing. When he asked where she was going, he sounded less like a husband and more like a man realizing a valuable piece had been removed from the board. She could not stay inside a marriage built out of possession, silence, and carefully managed appearances. Boston, she said. Dante flinched, a rare crack in his control. You can visit if you need to keep up appearances, she added, her voice sharp with hurt. He stepped closer, then stopped himself. She asked him whether any of it had been real. He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Evelyn zipped the suitcase with hands that would not stop trembling. Tears blurred the room. Wait, he said. But she was done waiting for silence to become love. She had spent 2 years translating his smallest gestures into proof that he cared. She could not do that anymore. I'm tired of making your silence mean what I need it to mean, she whispered. I am tired of turning crumbs into devotion. She lifted the suitcase. I am leaving. Dante moved fast and caught her wrist before she reached the door. The movement was not calculated. It was panic. Dante, go, he said. Evelyn looked down at his hand. For the first time, she saw fear beneath the control. But fear was not love. Panic at losing her could not erase the years he had let her feel alone. Let me go, she said. The room held its breath. For a long second, his fingers stayed around her wrist. Then slowly, they loosened. Evelyn walked out of the bedroom, out of the penthouse, and out of the life built to contain her. Dante remained in the hallway, motionless, as if the center of his private empire had just collapsed. Goodbye, Dante, she said without turning back. Downstairs. She refused his private car and raised her hand for a taxi instead. She needed something ordinary, uncontrolled, outside his reach. As the cab pulled away, the building rose behind her like a polished cage. She had finally escaped. The driver asked no questions. Manhattan slipped past the windows in streaks of gold and black, and Evelyn finally broke. The sobs came hard, the kind that had been trapped for too long. Her phone vibrated again and again with Dante's messages. She turned it off. Everything she owned now fit inside one suitcase, somewhere above the city. Dante was probably standing alone, tasting the first sharp edge of regret. Soon Evelyn was on Maria's worn couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of laundry soap and stale coffee. It was not luxury. It was better. It was human. Maria did not demand explanations. She made tea, sat beside her, and let the silence do the work. Evelyn's phone filled with notifications when she finally turned it on. Dante's messages had shifted from command to panic. I am sorry. 2 small words that looked strange coming from him. But the apology arrived after the damage, not before it. Evelyn turned the phone off again. Maria warned her that Dante would come after her, and Evelyn knew she was right. Dante did not know how to lose what he believed was his. That had always been part of the problem. To Dante, his wife was still a crucial piece on the board. The question was never whether he would appear, only how long he would wait. 3 days later, a heavy knock shook Maria's apartment door. Evelyn opened it and found him standing there in a perfect suit. Though his face looked wrecked, he had bypassed every lock, every boundary, every attempt at distance. Tracking her through driver logs proved what she had always feared. With a man like Dante, even hiding was only temporary. 5 minutes, he said. His voice was controlled. But his eyes were not. Evelyn reminded him that he had 2 years to speak. Dante's jaw tightened. You left, he said, as if her absence had broken some law of his world. She grabbed her coat and refused to let him step inside Maria's home. Instead, she led him down to the waiting black sedan. Once the doors closed, she folded her hands in her lap and looked straight at him. Talk for once. Dante looked uncertain. The man who could threaten, bargain, and command did not know how to begin when force was useless. His silence no longer frightened her. It exhausted her. He spoke like a man who had rehearsed every word and still found them too heavy. Evelyn already knew the truth as she understood it. She had been a tool. Dante rubbed a hand over his face. A strangely vulnerable gesture from someone who usually treated emotion like evidence against him. In his world, he said, attachment was dangerous. If rivals believed she mattered, she would become a target, so he treated her like she did not matter at all. He had called it protection for so long that even he almost believed it, but the excuse sounded weak inside the car. He mentioned a 6-day disappearance that had forced a rival to surrender, and something dark moved across his face. Evelyn felt a chill. She had spent years choosing not to look too closely at the violence around him. You thought hurting me emotionally was protection, she asked. He said distance kept her alive, that their marriage had to look transactional to fool his enemies. Except I heard you say I would never be your real wife, she replied. I had to believe it myself. He whispered. His voice failed on the last word. Evelyn did not comfort him. Not this time. She made him say the truth without hiding behind strategy. Dante held her gaze as his defenses finally cracked. Pain moved across his face. Naked and unpracticed. You became the center of everything, he admitted. I needed you to look at me like I was human. Not like the monster everyone else saw. That need had terrified him, in his world. Love was a weakness people used to aim knives. The confession sat between them, heavy and late. Evelyn felt the old urge to reach for him, to soften the blow. But years of loneliness had left scars that one honest sentence could not close. Then why hide it, she asked. Because I'm a coward, he said with a bitter laugh. Armed men did not scare him. Rival families did not make him blink. But needing one woman had nearly broken him. He had dressed fear in the language of strategy and called coldness security. Evelyn looked at him with tired eyes. Did it work? Did starving me emotionally keep me safe? His silence answered before he did. No, he whispered. Evelyn closed her eyes. Hearing the truth did not feel like victory. It felt like standing over the body of something that should have lived. I'm moving to Boston, she said. Dante went still. I need to be someone besides a useful asset. That's not what you are, he said quickly. Then what am I? He had no clean answer. For 2 years. She had buried her own will inside his life until a part of her died there. Let me rebuild it, he pleaded. You can she said. You read the thing that broke it. The words hurt him. She saw that. But she had spent too long protecting him from the pain he caused. When are you leaving? He asked. Saturday. I can't breathe here anymore. For one moment, shock stripped his face bare. Your time ran out, Evelyn whispered, holding the line even as it shook her. Before he could turn the conversation into another argument, she opened the car door and stepped into the cold. Upstairs. Maria gave her exactly what she needed. Silence, wine, and no lecture. Her dead phone lay nearby like a severed leash, for 48 hours. Evelyn moved through a fog and avoided anything connected to Dante. On Friday, Maria came in looking uneasy. Dante has been calling me, she admitted. Evelyn's whole body tightened. Maria said he claimed he would not stop her from leaving. He only wanted one final contact. No, Evelyn snapped. The word came out sharper than she intended. But it was the only thing keeping her steady. Are you sure? Maria asked. He sounds different. It's too late, Evelyn said, though saying it hurt. She was tired of being pulled back by the idea of who Dante might become. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. During the ride to the airport, Maria talked too much to cover the ache in the car. At the curb, she hugged Evelyn hard. Go find yourself again. When did you get so wise? Evelyn asked, trying to smile. Probably when my best friend married a crime boss, Maria said, though her eyes were wet. Evelyn gripped her luggage and forced herself toward the terminal. It was loud, bright, and brutally ordinary. She sat near her gate and watched planes lift into the sky. Then her phone vibrated, and her stomach dropped. A text from Dante. I know your flight is at 11:15. I will not stop you. But I need you to know this. Her pulse jumped. Another message appeared. I failed you. I treated my feelings like a liability and you like an asset. I used coldness because I was afraid to admit I needed you. Evelyn stared at the screen, breathing shallowly. You asked what you are to me. You are the only reason I want to become anything better. The only person who ever saw past the monster. I feared loving you because I knew losing you would ruin me. Her hands began to shake. This was the validation she had wanted for years. So why did it feel like another wound? One last text came through. Go to Boston. Build a life that is yours. I will do the work it takes to deserve you. The terminal blurred around her. Tears fell onto the screen before she realized she was crying. Flight 2847 began boarding. Evelyn moved down the jetway in a daze, while passengers pressed around her. Every step should have carried her closer to freedom. Instead, her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. A flight attendant's voice pulled her back. Evelyn stopped at the edge of the plane door, one hand gripping her suitcase handle. Leaving was the right thing, it had to be, but the truth she had demanded had finally arrived, and it was standing behind her like an unfinished sentence. This was the moment that changed everything. Evelyn stood at the mouth of the boarding tunnel, freedom only a few steps away, and turned back against the flow of passengers. Her phone was already in her hand. Dante answered on the first ring. His voice sounded raw, stripped of all the polish she had hated. Evelyn told him she wanted a real conversation, not a negotiation, not another performance, not a 5-minute confession designed to pull her home. Dante agreed, and for once there was no command in his voice. Only fear, only hope, only the sound of a man with nothing left to hide behind. She told him she was coming back, but the terms were hers. No more silent, obedient wife. No more distance dressed up as protection. No more deciding what she was allowed to know, feel, or survive. If they were going to try, he had to stop using coldness as a shield. He promised. From Dante. Promises had always sounded dangerous. This one sounded bare. The taxi ride back to Manhattan felt endless. The driver talked about traffic and rain while Evelyn sat in the dark, terrified of herself. Was she returning to the cage that hurt her? Maybe, but this time, she was walking in with her eyes open. The penthouse was still cold and marble bright, but something had shifted. Dante's jacket lay thrown over a chair. Papers were scattered across the table. A stained coffee mug sat near his laptop. For once, the untouchable man's world looked lived in, not staged. He stood in the hallway wearing yesterday's clothes, his Mafia mask worn thin by sleeplessness. Two strangers who had shared a bed for years stared at each other. Finally, Dante said he did not know how to be vulnerable. The admission was ugly and simple. Evelyn believed it. That did not mean it was enough. She dropped her bag and stepped close enough that neither of them could hide. She told him they had to face the gala first. The public rejection had humiliated her. But what destroyed her was how easily he came home afterward and acted normal. Dante's composure faltered. He swore what he felt was real. Even if his defenses had been cruel, he said the gala was survival politics. A way to keep his family from pushing him toward a perfect underworld bride. He thought if they believed Evelyn meant nothing, they would leave her alone. Evelyn listened, but her face did not soften. At last the kingpin's iron calm gave way. He admitted he had convinced his family she was useless because he wanted her away from the syndicate's expectations, away from their alliances, away from everyone but him. The possessiveness in that confession was ugly, but the fear underneath was real. Evelyn cried because some part of her had needed to hear this long before it became too late. In the sterile quiet of the penthouse, they tried to build the foundation they had skipped. She set her first boundary. She would not be an invisible wife who ironed his shirts, smiled at his dinners, and vanished into his image. His rough hands framed her face, and his thumb caught her tears. Don't swallow your anger anymore, he said. Fight me when I shut down. Break the silence. Take up space. The words shook because they cost him something. He did not want a quiet subordinate. He wanted an equal, even if she came to him furious. Then the wall between them broke. He kissed her, not like a man taking what was his, but like someone drowning after years of refusing air. When they pulled apart, Evelyn knew this would not be simple. Desire could not fix damage. But at least the truth was finally in the room. That was where the change began to show. But not cleanly. Dante made a quiet promise. And for once his words did not sound like weapons. In the weeks that followed, he started coming home for dinner, then ruined the first 3 by answering coded calls at the table. Evelyn walked out each time, on the 4th night. He turned the phone off with visible effort and left it in another room. It was a small thing, almost laughably small, but for a man built out of control, it cost him. Progress did not arrive as romance. It arrived as restraint. Evelyn answered with truths of her own. She told him what it felt like to erase herself, so his life could look perfect. They fought hard. He retreated behind old defenses. And she forced him back into the conversation, until he learned that silence would no longer save him. Some nights ended with slammed doors. Some mornings began with apologies neither of them knew how to give gracefully. Then one trigger threatened everything. Dante came home early and found Evelyn cold, her voice flat. She had found messages with the woman once expected to become his underworld bride. His face drained of color. Nothing physical happened, he said. Evelyn asked why he hid the meetings. Her voice shook from the effort to stay calm. If they were rebuilding trust. Why had he left this out? Dante approached carefully, as if one wrong move could set off an explosion. He said Serena was tied to a security issue. Evelyn refused to accept that 4 private meetings were just logistics. He fell back on the word complicated. She looked at him with disbelief. Your entire life is complicated. That is exactly why you don't get to decide what I am allowed to know. At last, he admitted he had hidden it to avoid this fight. The admission poisoned the air. Dante, cornered and afraid, struck back. He suggested she had been looking for another excuse to run. The old numbness spread through Evelyn's chest. They stood in a silence sharp enough to cut through what little trust they had rebuilt. Slowly his anger collapsed into defeat. You don't trust me, he said. You keep making that impossible, she answered. You still treat me like a civilian standing outside your real life. Her fear spills out before she could stop it. Every secret dragged them back to the gala. Every omission made her feel useful, not loved. Finally, Dante admitted he did not know how to do this. A man who had survived by controlling information now stood exposed by it. He said he feared full honesty would destroy them. Evelyn held his gaze and told him she could not live in constant suspicion. The silence that followed confirmed what she already feared. He swallowed his pride and gave her the timeline. Serena had contacted him and offered herself as an alliance if he wanted it. The past had returned at the exact moment he was trying to change, and instead of bringing Evelyn into the truth, he had handled it alone. Evelyn's next question was quiet enough to be dangerous. Dante dragged his hands through his hair, looking like a man drowning on dry land. He said he had used his marriage as a shield. She immediately asked why he had not simply said he loved his wife. His eyes pleaded for understanding he had not earned. He said the meetings were a test, a way to prove to himself that the perfect syndicate bride meant nothing to him anymore. Serena offered strategy, bloodline, and safety. But she made him feel nothing. Only Evelyn had broken through the numbness he once mistook for strength. I should have said no to the meetings, Dante admitted. The honesty disarmed Evelyn more than any excuse could have. She wanted to use betrayal as armor, but his vulnerability made it harder. No more secrets, she said. If this is a marriage, I get the hard truths. Not the edited version, Dante agreed. Then he admitted there was one final meeting with Serena on Monday. Evelyn did not flinch. Then I am coming with you, non-negotiable. It was messy, painful, and far from romantic, but for once. She was not being pushed out of the room where her own life was being decided. You want me to trust you, Evelyn said. You want to prove this marriage is real. Then we face her together. She watched the conflict move across his face. The ruthless boss against the husband trying to learn compromise. Okay, he said at last. Monday arrived cold and bright. Evelyn rejected the designer clothes Dane's stylist had chosen and put on a simple black dress. It felt like armor, but this time it was hers. They entered a private midtown restaurant where powerful people whispered sins over expensive coffee. For once, Evelyn walked in as herself, not as Dante's decoration. Serena was already seated flawless in cream and gold. "Dante," she breathed, then froze when she saw Evelyn. "I didn't realize you were bringing her." Dante placed a hand on Evelyn's back, a deliberate claim, but Evelyn noticed what mattered more. Serena aimed every smile at Dante, leaning into his space as if Evelyn did not exist. Dante pulled away and stayed guarded. "I've been thinking about what I said," Serena purred, trying to erase Evelyn from the table. "About my mistake years ago." Evelyn watched her carefully. This was not regret. This was strategy in a silk dress. "I am finally in a place where I could be the kind of partner you need," Serena said. "I already have a partner," Dante replied, his voice firm. He reached across the table and took Evelyn's hand. Serena's perfect expression cracked. Evelyn leaned in, calm but sharp. "Dante and I are working on our marriage. There is no room for whatever you think you are offering." Serena tried to laugh, to soften the humiliation, but Evelyn did not let her. "You saw an opening. It was strategic, but you are too late." Serena understood then that Evelyn was no longer standing outside her own marriage. After Serena left, Dante walked Evelyn into the cold Manhattan air. Evelyn needed reassurance more than she wanted to admit. He pulled her close beneath the city lights. "I choose you every day," he whispered, "especially on the hard ones." She leaned into him and let herself believe it for a moment. But trust after years of damage is fragile. One hard gust can shatter it. Hours later, the illusion broke. Evelyn was in bed when Dante's furious voice erupted from the study. She found him in the shadows, gripping his phone, jaw locked, every inch of him charged with violence. "I don't care what he wants. The answer is no," Dante snapped. "Tell him he will regret this." He ended the call, still radiating danger. Evelyn asked softly what had happened. "Nothing," he said. "Just business." The door inside him slammed shut. The vulnerable husband disappeared, and the cold man who ruled through silence returned. "You re-shutting me out again," she whispered. He turned with an empty expression. "Some things are mine to handle." The words struck harder than any shout. Evelyn could almost feel the old penthouse walls closing around her again. "I am trying to trust you," Evelyn said. "But you make it impossible." Dante turned his back. "This conversation is over." Something in her ignited. "You don't get to decide when we're done." He turned, anger flashing in his eyes. He said he was trying to protect her from the blood and consequences of his life. His enemies would use her to destroy him. "So keeping me safe means keeping me blind?" she asked. "Yes," he said. The answer landed with brutal clarity. Evelyn went terrifyingly calm. "Then we are done." Dante froze as if he had not understood the words. "This is not a marriage," Evelyn told him. "This is you pulling strings while I sit in a penthouse, pretending I matter." He said she was overreacting, but the old trick no longer worked. "I gave you another chance, and you are still the same man." Dante asked if she really wanted the truth about missing men and bloody retaliation. "Yes," she said. Because the violence was already in their bedroom. It lived in his silences, his locked doors, his sudden empty stares. "I would rather choke on the truth than keep guessing." Then she asked the question that made him flinch. "Is this a marriage if you keep lying to me?" "I have never lied to you," Dante insisted. "Leaving out the truth is still lying," Evelyn said. "And you have hidden things from me since our wedding." The room fell into a hard silence. "I don't know how to give you what you want," he admitted. "Then I guess we redone," she whispered, reaching for her suitcase. Dante appeared in the doorway, panic tearing through his armor. He begged her to stay, but words could not repair the foundation he kept cracking. "You cannot trust me with your real life," she said. "So what is the point?" His voice broke. "The point is, I love you." It was the first time he said it, and somehow that made it hurt more. "You love me enough to say it when I am leaving," Evelyn cried, "but not enough to let me be your wife." He said he was trying, but she finally saw the pattern clearly. He wanted love without surrender, intimacy without exposure, a wife without risk. She zipped her bag. "I love you too," she whispered. "But love is not enough if you keep using control to survive." She walked past him this time. The feared kingpin did not stop her. The door closed with a sound that felt final. Downstairs, Evelyn climbed into a midnight taxi with a suitcase that felt heavier than it was. The driver asked no questions while Manhattan blurred outside the window. Her phone rang. Dante. She declined the call and shut the device off. Later, Maria opened the door, took one look at her, and pulled her inside. They sat in the dark until Evelyn broke open. "He finally said he loved me." She choked out at 3 a.m, and it still wasn't enough. Maria's answer was gentle but firm. "Words are cheap." Evelyn hated how true it sounded. "Maybe I was a fool to think a criminal kingpin could actually love anyone," Evelyn whispered. Maria did not argue. Eventually, Evelyn slept in a room that smelled of ordinary life. When she woke to a gray morning and turned on her phone, there were 47 missed calls. Dante had been trying to claw his way back into her attention. Then a different message appeared. Vincent Russo, one of Dante's most dangerous associates, offered quiet help. Terror moved through her. When a woman steps out of a powerful man's shadow, other wolves notice she is alone. Her phone rang again from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Detective Chen introduced himself and said he was investigating Dante's criminal operation. Evelyn felt her heart drop. "Is he hurt?" she blurted, proving the bond still had teeth. "No," Chen said. He wanted to know what she could tell him. Evelyn dodged the question and ended the call. The authorities were closing in. A more detached woman might have warned her husband immediately. But blind loyalty to someone who kept hurting her felt like another trap. Maria saw the dread on her face. "What happened?" Evelyn looked up. "They want everything on Dante." For hours. Evelyn sat with the question tearing through her. Why was she still protecting a man who had locked her out of his life? Trauma makes loyalty complicated. It can turn betrayal into something that still feels impossible. She called the precinct and told Chen she knew nothing, then hung up before her voice could betray her. Then Dante called. His voice was flat and controlled. But when she told him she had not spoken to the police, his breath caught with relief. Evelyn hated that she heard it. Hated that it mattered. Hated that some part of her still wanted to protect him. Evelyn stayed on the line, fraying with every second. "I did it because of the truth," she said. Dante asked for one final meeting, and the request sounded too much like another attempt to regain control. Evelyn was ready this time. "I spoke to a lawyer this morning," she said quietly. "The papers are coming." His voice changed at once, dropping into desperate promises of change. She rejected them. Trying was not the same as changing. She refused to wait for a better version of him that might never arrive. He panicked because he was losing his hold. She ended the call before he could pull her back. Ending the call felt like her first real act of freedom. Her hands shook as she stared at the phone like it might explode. Then the screen lit up again. "Find out who your husband really is. Meet me at Café Luca at noon. Come alone." The message was signed only with an S. Serena. Every survival instinct told Evelyn not to go. But the hunger for answers was stronger than caution. Soon she walked into the dim cafe, far from Dante's world of marble and security. Serena waited at a corner table, calm and composed, ready to deliver another wound. "You came," Serena said, her voice perfectly steady. She pushed a thick dossier across the table. "I thought you deserved clarity before you left." Evelyn's instincts screamed at her to run, but she opened the file. Contracts, legal transcripts, surveillance photos. These were not memories. They were evidence. Handwritten notes marked her like a target. Acquisition successful. Asset secured. Evelyn's breath caught. Serena watched with the pity of someone who had sharpened the knife before handing it over. "Your marriage was a merger," she said. "Your grandfather left a hidden trust worth $30 million. Serena explained the rules of the trust. Evelyn had to be married before turning 30. Dread spread through her as the timeline lined up. A death in March. A staged meeting in May. A fast romance. A September wedding. Only weeks before the money became available. Every point fell too neatly into place. You were a financial acquisition, Serena said. Dante needed cash. And you were the way to get it. Evelyn tried to deny it, grabbing at memories that still felt sincere. Serena exhaled, carrying old bitterness. He said exactly what you needed to hear, she said. I know because I once believed him too. I know what it feels like to think you matter to Dante Moretti, Serena said. But to him, relationships are strategy. She stood, leaving the evidence between them like a body on the table. Get out before you lose more of yourself. Then she walked away. Evelyn sat alone with the file and the terrible quiet. Her mind began rewriting every memory. The courtship, the tenderness, the jewelry, the wedding vows. All of it turned cold. She felt sick as one thought pressed down on her chest. Maybe she had never been loved at all. Maybe she had only been acquired. Her phone vibrated. Dante. Evelyn let the screen go dark, but the calls kept coming like an assault. Finally, she answered. What do you want? His voice was tight, wounded, demanding. He asked where she was and tried to sound protective. Evelyn laughed and it came out broken. Why? So you can secure your investment. Silence followed. It was the kind of silence that told her she had struck something real. My grandfather's trust, she said, her voice shaking. $30 million. She heard his breathing stop. Who told you? He asked. Deflection. Did you know before we met? At last he answered yes. That single word destroyed the ground beneath her. So the whole relationship was built on a lie, she whispered. The touches, the late-night confessions, the jewelry, the wedding. Dante's voice lost its power. It started that way, he admitted. But it changed. Evelyn was too hurt to follow him into that argument. I am not responsible for sorting through your lies anymore, she said. He tried to explain. Admitting the money had mattered at first while insisting the feelings became real. Stop, she said. The damage was too deep. He had made love and you sound so similar that she could no longer tell them apart. Evelyn sat motionless in the cafe while the world continued around her. Dante's voice turned low and frantic. Tell me where you are. We need to talk face to face. She smiled without humor. So you can look me in the eyes while you lie better. The motive felt painfully clear. He needed money. She had access to it. Romance was the wrapping paper. She ended the call and walked into the cold. For hours, she wandered unfamiliar streets, letting the freezing air keep her inside her body. Every sweet memory now carried a second meaning, and both meanings hurt. When Maria saw the state she was in, she pulled Evelyn inside and locked the door. As Maria read through the file, anger hardened her face. The calculation, she said darkly. All of this was calculated. Evelyn sat numb, whispering that she should have seen it. Maria shut that down immediately. Trusting someone did not make her stupid. Turning trust into a weapon made him cruel, still. Evelyn blamed herself, replaying every sign she had missed. Then the phone lit up again. Dante, she blocked him, for the next 3 days. He circled her life from outside, with men, messages, and flowers. She threw the flowers away. Evelyn moved through the apartment, like someone detached from her own body. On the 4th day, her lawyer brought another blow. Dante had filed to block the divorce, claiming the marriage had never been physically consummated. It was a lie, and a vicious one. Her attorney saw it as a pressure tactic, but Evelyn understood the larger game. If he could invalidate the marriage, he might protect the trust from fraud claims. Dante did not release resources easily. Then came the second motion. He was asking for $50,000 a month in spousal support. The paper shook in Evelyn's hand. $50,000 a month. That was the price Dante had put on her freedom. Evelyn gripped the phone, her voice shaking as she told her lawyer she wanted no assets, no revenge, only the divorce signed. But men like Dante did not let go cleanly. They found new ways to hold the leash. That night, the last of her composure broke. She collapsed into Maria's arms, grieving a man who might never have existed. She sobbed because she hated him, and because some broken part of her still loved him. That contradiction hurt worse than any document Serena had shown her. 7 days later, everything shifted again. Maria pointed to the television. Dante Moretti was being led away in federal handcuffs. Evelyn expected relief, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, she felt almost nothing as she stared at his empty expression on the screen. The end of a powerful man's control did not instantly repair the damage he had caused. Then the phone rang. It was Frank, a family loyalist. Dante had been granted one call from custody, and he wanted to use it on her. Every instinct told Evelyn to refuse. Instead, she heard herself whisper yes. The line crackled, and Dante's voice came through stripped of its usual force. He told her there was a hidden safe behind a painting in the penthouse, opened with her birth date. Evelyn immediately called it manipulation, but his desperation sharpened. He said people would die if she did not get what was inside. He swore it on the twisted, complicated love he had for her. Evelyn's voice broke as she listened. Despite everything, she agreed, not because she trusted him, not because she forgave him, but because if innocent lives were at risk, she could not ignore it. Evelyn returned to the penthouse, and it felt preserved like a crime scene. His jacket still hung over a chair. Her books sat where she had left them. Dante had kept the place almost exactly as it was when she walked out, which made it feel less romantic than haunted. She moved through the rooms with her pulse hammering. Behind the painting, the safe opened with her birth date. Inside was a drive. Beside it lay a handwritten letter. Every rational instinct told her to leave immediately. But unfinished truth has its own gravity. With trembling hands, she opened it. The letter was raw in a way Dante had almost never allowed himself to be. He wrote that 21 days after the wedding, he realized his original plan had failed. He had targeted her money with the same cold precision he used in business. But Evelyn had looked at him with genuine kindness, and that had frightened him more than any enemy. Instead of becoming honest, he became crueler. He isolated her emotionally so he would not have to face how badly he needed her. Reading it made Evelyn feel sick. He had known enough to understand the damage, and still he had let her starve. He did not ask for forgiveness. He only wanted her to know she had never stayed just an asset to him. The drive, he wrote, contained enough evidence to bring down criminal networks across the region. By leaving it for her, he was giving control to the person he had hurt most. Evelyn checked the date on the letter. 2 years. For 2 years, he had loved her in secret, while still letting her believe she meant almost nothing. That truth did not heal her. It enraged her. She sank into his leather chair, unable to reconcile the man who used her with the man who might have loved her all along. Her sense of reality began to slip. Was the letter another manipulation? Or the first honest thing he had ever given her? She sat in the dim study with the drive in her hand, watching the light catch its metal edge. Then the phone rang. Dante's lawyer asked if she had the device, his voice tight with worry. When she said yes, he told her to leave immediately. Dangerous people were coming for it. That tiny piece of hardware could shake entire criminal hierarchies. Everyone wanted the leverage it held, and somehow Dante had placed it in the hands of the woman he had broken. Why me? Evelyn asked the lawyer. The hesitation before his answer said enough. Because you are the only person he trusts. She looked down at the drive. A healthy part of her wanted to hand it over and let Dante's empire burn. Another part, still bound to him, could not stop caring. Then heavy footsteps broke the silence of the penthouse. A man entered the study with a face empty of warmth. Marcus Webb, he said. Evelyn knew the name from whispers. One of Dante's most dangerous shadows had just stepped into the room. Marcus smiled without kindness and said he worked for Dante. He demanded the drive. Evelyn tried to stall, pretending not to understand, but Marcus recited her recent movements with frightening accuracy. He had been watching her. When she refused, he pulled a gun with the calm of a man used to violence. He explained the problem simply. If he did not get the drive, he was finished. And that made her life unimportant to him. For 2 years, Evelyn had lived beside Dante's dangerous world without being touched by it directly. Now the violence had finally crossed the threshold. If I don't secure that asset, I am dead, Marcus said, blocking her way out. Evelyn's mind raced. They were alone in a soundproof room. No one was likely to hear her scream. She talked to buy time, but his control was slipping. Her eyes moved from the gun to the room around her. Then she threw the drive hard against the reinforced glass. The sharp crack of impact startled him. Instead of running for the door, She sprinted toward Dante's heavy desk and the locked compartment beneath it. Fear moved through her body faster than thought. Adrenaline took over. Evelyn reached the hidden compartment and pulled out the cold weight of a gun. She turned just as Marcus steadied himself. They faced each other, both trapped inside the same rising panic. "You don't have the nerve to fire that," Marcus said. "Do you want to bet your life on it?" she answered. Her hands shook, but her voice held. Then Vincent Russo appeared in the doorway and ordered Marcus to lower his weapon. "I can tee," Evelyn breathed, still gripping hers. Marcus tightened, refusing to back down, and the room edged toward blood. Vincent was not playing the hero. He was an enforcer responding to a threat, and he knew exactly how dangerous Marcus was. His voice stayed low, but the warning in it was unmistakable. Marcus finally lowered his gun. Evelyn lowered hers a second later, her body shaking from too much fear in too short a time. When she asked why Vincent was helping her, he gave an answer that cut through the confusion. Dante had once saved Vincent's wife when everyone else looked away. Loyalty like that did not come from money. It came from debts written in blood. In the armored car, Evelyn's fingers felt numb. She could not fully process that Dante had sacrificed part of his criminal world to keep her alive. A man like Dante rarely gave up power. Yet he had used his one phone call to protect her. Vincent explained it with no emotion, as if the fact spoke for itself. He dropped her at an ordinary office building and drove away. Evelyn stood there, caught between the violence Dante represented and the strange, relentless way he kept trying to shield her. She hated him. She missed him. She could not untangle either truth. Evelyn entered a sterile room, her legs still trembling from the adrenaline crash. Dante's defense attorney was there, along with FBI agent David Morrison, a man who seemed built out of rules and authority. Morrison wasted no time. He told her Dante had been documenting syndicate transactions for 5 years. Evelyn clutched the flash drive as if it could steady her. 5 years. That meant long before the arrest. Long before the divorce. Long before she understood what kind of war she had married into. Dante had been collecting secrets, while everyone around him believed he was only protecting his throne. Morrison showed her the data in pieces, not all at once. First bank transfers tied to city officials, then weapons routes. Then names of men Evelyn had seen smiling at gala tables. The drive was not just evidence against Dante. It was a map of the whole machine around him. Morrison offered witness protection, a full erasure of her old identity. And for one moment it sounded like peace. But Attorney Chen cut in with the part Morrison avoided. If the data was released carelessly, witnesses, wives, drivers, and children could die before sunrise. Now the choices were clear, and each one was terrible. Give the drive to the FBI and risk a bloody collapse. Hide it and let the syndicate survive. Destroy it and leave Dante's enemies untouched. Evelyn stared at the small device, stunned by how much destruction could fit in her palm. Morrison pushed harder, reminding her of the men hunting her and the danger she was in. He wanted Fear to decide quickly. Chen finally forced him out of the room. Once the door closed, Chen asked the only question that mattered. What do you want? Not what Dante wanted. Not what the FBI needed. Not what Serena had twisted into her mind. Her Evelyn opened her mouth. And the answer came out rough with exhaustion. I want to stop loving a liar. It was the truest thing she had said all week. But the past did not loosen its grip because she wished it would. She set one condition. Before she gave up the drive, she wanted to look Dante in the eye. What followed was a 72-hour wait in a safe house that felt more like a cell. 3 days of bad food, little sleep, and memories that would not leave her alone. Chen arranged 15 minutes at the detention facility. 15 minutes was not much, but it was enough to reopen every wound. The place smelled of bleach, metal, and despair. Dante was brought in without his tailored armor. No perfect suit. No polished control. Just a tired man in prison clothes, marked by sleeplessness and defeat. Still, the moment he saw Evelyn, something fierce woke in his eyes. They sat close enough to touch, yet the damage between them felt enormous. For once, he looked smaller than the stories built around him. Evelyn took control of the meeting at once. Do not manipulate me. Do not soften it. Do not perform. Dante seemed to understand he had no advantage left. He exhaled and finally said the thing she had come to hear. At first, he had chosen her for the money. His organization needed $30 million to move into legitimate business. and her trust made her the perfect target. He admitted he had studied her routines and engineered their first meeting with cold precision. Evelyn sat very still. What had felt like fate had been built by someone who knew exactly where she was vulnerable. The confession destroyed what little structure she had left. When did it change? She asked. Dante gave a specific answer, their fourth meeting. When she spoke about her family's sense of honor and looked at him as if he was still capable of having one. That was when calculation tangled with something real. Something he had been too cowardly to face. He kept lying and told himself ignorance would protect her from his world. Evelyn looked at him, shaking with anger. You don't get to call lies protection just because you were afraid of the truth. Evelyn asked about the letter from the safe. Dante's distress looked real when he swore it was genuine. Written when he first realized how much he needed her presence in his life. When she pushed him on why he had waited so long, the deeper damage came out. He told her about his childhood. About a father who taught him through pain that vulnerability could get a man killed. He isolated her because he had no idea how to hold love without fearing it. Evelyn listened, but she did not excuse him. A tragic past explained the wound. It did not erase what he had done with it. Evelyn did not pull away when his hand brushed hers, and the contact released a wave of feeling she hated herself for having. Dante admitted that loving her had triggered fear in him like a threat response. He ruined their marriage to hide how badly he needed her. But when her safety was at risk, his self-preservation finally lost. He was facing 20 years in prison. And still he refused to use the drive if releasing it carelessly would hurt innocent people. The confession did not make him innocent. It made him complicated in a way that hurt more. Dante accepted the punishment waiting for him. He said he had earned it. He urged Evelyn to use the data only to protect herself and to break free from him, if that was what she needed. With 2 minutes left, Evelyn said the impossible truth aloud. She hated him for what he had done, and she still loved him in a way she could not simply cut out. Dante's face tightened as if the words physically hurt him. There was no clean answer between them. No easy forgiveness. No neat goodbye. Just two damaged people, staring at the wreckage they had made together. His voice broke when he thanked her for being the only real anchor in a life built on lies and violence. Evelyn stepped back because staying close was dangerous. If she used the drive to save him, what would that make everything between them? Dante said they could stop hiding behind their defenses and try to grow something real from ruined ground. He gave her the choice. And for once he did not try to control it. Evelyn left without a word. By the time she reached the car, grief tore through her so violently she could barely breathe. Leaving him hurt, staying had nearly destroyed her. Chen messaged her for a decision. Evelyn's mind flooded with contradictions. She saw Dante wasting away in a federal cell, then saw the damage his empire had caused. The life she had once imagined and the reality in front of her were separated by a canyon. She asked for 24 hours. That night, the safe house felt too small, the walls too close. She kept replaying his remorse, trying to decide whether it was real or only another kind of survival. At 2 a.m, an unknown caller broke the silence. Serena. Evelyn froze as Serena said she needed to confess something about the documents. Serena's confession changed everything. The financial documents were fake. Her voice shook as she admitted what she had done, out of obsession and resentment. She had forged the timeline so Evelyn would believe Dante married her for money and leave him. Evelyn could barely breathe. She accused Serena of another manipulation. But Serena's lie had cracked under the weight of Dante's imprisonment. The truth was blinding. Dante had not known about the inheritance when he married her. His feelings, however damaged, had not been built on that motive. Serena cried, finally naming her own poison. And then the call ended. If Serena was telling the truth, Evelyn's collapse had been built on a lie. Dante had not chosen her for the trust. Evelyn began checking records in a frantic rush. The dates aligned. The trust appeared after the marriage was already in place. She had severed the deepest bond of her life over a betrayal that had never happened. At 3 a.m, she called Chen and demanded access to Dante. She explained everything, expecting relief. Instead, Chen fell silent. Then he gave her the next devastating truth. Dante had known the documents were fake the entire time. Dante knew Serena had manipulated her and let the trap close anyway. When Evelyn demanded to know why, Chen gave the reason. Dante believed his own damage was destroying her. He allowed her to believe the worst so she could leave without guilt. The room seemed to tilt beneath Evelyn. He had taken her hatred, signed the separation, and sat in custody with that lie on his shoulders so she could be free. It was not simple nobility. It was not simple manipulation. It was the warped love of a man who still thought pain was protection. Evelyn made her decision. And this time she understood every piece of it. She took the encrypted drive to federal headquarters and stated her terms one by one. The authorities could use the data to dismantle the syndicate, but Dante would receive full immunity. The families named in the files would be moved before the raids, and she would disappear from the grid. When the investigator hesitated, she threatened to destroy the drive. He did not understand why she would vanish if Dante was being cleared. Evelyn did. Dante would only stop fighting if he believed she was beyond his reach. Within 72 hours, the fallout filled the media. Federal action tore apart the corruption network in stages. Not chaos. Safe houses were emptied first. Witnesses were moved. Then the arrests began. A brief report mentioned Dante's immunity and his wife entering witness protection. Evelyn watched the broadcast and asked Chen how long before Dante realized the story was false. Chen gave her maybe a week. That gave her a small window to rebuild herself and decide whether Dante could still belong anywhere in her life. Two people had tried to save each other by disappearing. Neither of them had learned how to stay. Evelyn stepped into the cold city and left her old life behind. 3 blocks away, Dante signed the immunity papers, convinced she had chosen safety over him. He did not know she was watching from a cafe, measuring the cost of her own heart. During the first week, she stripped away every piece of the woman she used to be. In a cheap motel, she cut her hair with dull scissors, uneven and shaking, severing the image Dante's world had created. Expensive clothes were replaced by plain layers. She became someone harder to recognize, even to herself. Being free of the syndicate should have felt like liberation. Instead, it felt like withdrawal. On the 8th day, Chen gave her a warning. Dante knew. Evelyn's body reacted before her mind did. Dante had picked apart the witness protection story and confirmed she was not in the system. He was looking for the truth. She studied her reflection. Uneven hair. No makeup. Anonymous clothes. She barely recognized herself. Then the encrypted phone lit up. "I know you are not in witness protection." The words sat on the screen like a hand reaching through the dark. Evelyn stared at the message, her fingers trembling. Dante's next words were controlled, almost painfully. "So I know you are out there. I will wait. Just tell me you are safe," she typed back. "I am safe." His reply came instantly. "I will not look for you." A man who had built his life on force was choosing restraint. That should have made her feel free. Instead, it hurt in a place she had not protected. A broken part of her had expected him to chase her, to prove love in the old toxic language. Instead, he respected the boundary and suffered quietly. 2 weeks later, Evelyn took a real job under her own name. She moved to a modest apartment in Queens. The rent was nothing compared to the life she had left behind, but the key in her hand felt like something she had earned. Entry-level work gave her ordinary tasks and ordinary exhaustion. Her coworkers knew nothing about her marriage to crime, and that ignorance felt like a gift. Still, at midnight, her thoughts returned to Dante. Was he suffering the same withdrawal? 30 days later, Vincent Russo appeared at a bar near her building. "You look good," he said. "How is he?" she asked. Vincent exhaled. "Miserable, but functioning. He's moving into legitimate business." Then he added a correction. When a stranger at a bar mocked Dante for losing his wife, Dante had put the man through a table. Not exactly stable. Evelyn felt a sad smile tug at her mouth despite herself. "Is he okay?" "Physically." "Yes," Vincent said. "Inside, not really." Evelyn looked down at her drink. "I miss him too," she whispered. "But I am not hiding. I am healing." Vincent told her Dante asked about her constantly. "I tell him you're safe." Evelyn nodded. "That's all he gets for now." Under the neon lights, Evelyn unfolded Dante's letter again. "You became the only true thing in my life of calculated lies." Loving a damaged man had never been the whole problem. The real question was whether love could rebuild what damage had destroyed. 3 months after leaving his orbit, Evelyn contacted him and demanded neutral ground. They chose an empty art gallery. Quiet enough for 2 people to hear themselves breathe. She arrived in jeans, no armor, no performance, before facing the person who hurt her. Evelyn had made one promise to herself: she would not shrink for him again. Heavy footsteps echoed through the gallery. Evelyn. His voice sent a chill down her spine. Dante stood 10 feet away. Careful not to cross a boundary, he no longer had the right to touch. He looked tired, thinner somehow. Stripped of the aura that once made him seem untouchable. "You look different," he said. "I cut my hair." His eyes softened. "You look like yourself. Like the woman I met before I tried to turn you into someone else." He apologized without a grand speech. Then he admitted the bar fight before she asked. "I lost control. I am paying for the damage, literally and otherwise." Dante gave a sad half-smile. "How are you?" "Really, I am okay," she said. "I have a life that is finally mine." She studied him. "Are you glad?" His answer came without hesitation. "I am devastated you are not beside me. But I am glad you are building something of your own." Evelyn stepped closer. "I spoke to Serena. She told me the documents were fake. You did not marry me for the money. Why didn't you defend yourself?" His voice cracked under the weight of his guilt. "Because you deserve to believe the worst of me if it helped you leave. I would not trap you with the truth." Dante admitted he had confused protection with control again and again. He said waking without her had been destroying him. But that was not an excuse anymore. The penthouse felt like a cell. He had fired 2 men for trying to track her, then rehired one after realizing the order had come from his own panic. He had started therapy because Vincent threatened to drag him there unconscious. It was not noble. It was ugly, reluctant, and late, but he had gone back every week. "I am not asking you to reward effort," he said. "I am telling you I finally understand effort is the minimum." Fair no longer mattered to him. He said her stability did, even if he was not part of her future. Evelyn studied the exhaustion carved into his face. She mentioned his letter, the line about her being the only true thing in his life of lies. Dante said he still meant it. Her leaving proved she was real. She had not stayed because of money, fear, or the bond he had built around her. She had reached her limit, and he had finally respected it. Evelyn touched his cheek, and he went completely still. Then she said the thing that frightened them both. "Maybe we start over." Dante asked if she truly wanted that. Evelyn took her time before answering. She was willing to try, but only with conditions. She would be angry. She would not become the obedient wife again. She would not tolerate him disappearing into silence and calling it protection. She wanted a partner, not a dictator. Dante agreed. Fully. He admitted that treating her like an accessory had destroyed them. He had built walls where trust should have been. He said he was ready to do whatever work was required. Evelyn searched his eyes for the strategist, the man waiting to manipulate. What she saw instead was fear, raw, human fear. She did not see a hidden angle in his face, so she set her boundaries clearly. She would keep her apartment. She would keep her job. She was not moving back into the penthouse to pretend everything had healed. They would go to therapy with someone who was not afraid of his history, and the final rule was simple: 1 lie, and she left. She told him to walk away now if he could not control the damage he caused. Dante framed her face and said he had loved her early, before he knew what to do with it. He would spend as long as it took proving she had not been wrong to see a man inside the monster. That was the only measure left. Evelyn admitted she hated that she believed him. It would have been easier if he were only a monster. Instead, she saw a wounded man who had loved her in the only broken way he knew, and that made everything harder. When he apologized again, she asked him to kiss her. Dante moved carefully, as if she might shatter, and then the kiss turned desperate with everything they had both survived. When they separated, she warned him that the road ahead would be brutal. He would have to show change, not promise it. He nodded like a man receiving a sentence he had earned. They began again in the wreckage of everything that had happened, and it was harder than either of them wanted to admit. Therapy stripped them down. Dante failed often. He checked her location once without asking, then confessed before she found out and slept in a hotel for a week. because she could not look at him. He left one session furious, then returned 20 minutes later, shaking with shame. Evelyn disappeared into silence for days after bad fights, and he had to learn not to punish her for needing space. Progress came slowly. No threats. No locked doors. No secrets dressed as safety. Some days felt impossible, but they kept going. 8 months later, Dante arrived with a small box. Inside was not a massive diamond meant to announce status. It was the simple band Evelyn had once chosen for herself. His voice was steady. He was not demanding a contract. He was offering a future. Someday, if she wanted it. If she said no, he would keep doing the work anyway. Evelyn looked at the ring, at the symbol of their ruined and rebuilt story. She slid it onto her finger and felt a quiet comfort. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said. Evelyn gave Dante a 6-month probation period, and for a man used to total control, uncertainty was its own punishment. But he adapted. 6 months became 2 years of learning, failing and trying again. Evelyn held her boundaries and refused to slide back into the old bond. Dante, against every expectation, learned to loosen his need to possess her. 3 years after the day she almost left for good, they returned to the altar. No syndicate display. No power games. No room full of people measuring alliances. Just 2 scarred people making a deliberate choice with full knowledge of the cost. The magistrate had no idea what they had survived to stand there. Their vows were not a fairy tale. They were an acknowledgement of war. Afterward, Dante took her to a modest Brooklyn restaurant, the place where his fixation had first begun. During dinner, Evelyn understood something. When he once said she lacked the traits of a syndicate wife, it had not only been an insult, it had also been an admission. She had been too independent to become a submissive extension of him. Dante called her perfect. She corrected him. She was not perfect. She was real. This time, he understood the difference. Away from the noise of the city, Evelyn felt something close to peace. Peace did not erase trauma. It asked her to rebuild trusts piece by piece and stop pretending healing was clean. They chose each other with open eyes, knowing exactly what lived in both of them. When Evelyn said she loved him, it mattered because she said it without fear. She needed him to hear the words without turning them into ownership. He accepted her anger, her defiance, and the parts of her that refused to be managed. Their love was not soft in the way stories pretend love should be. It was scarred, awake and earned. They stood together on cracked Brooklyn pavement. 2 people who had to dismantle their whole world before they could build anything honest. This was not a fairy tale. It was survival. Dante had learned empathy only after nearly losing the one person who saw past his violence. Evelyn had learned her worth by finally refusing his lies and walking away. She never made it to Boston. Not because she was weak, but because the truth she demanded finally stood in front of her. Stripped of arrogance. Stripped of excuses. Stripped of the mask. And this time, she chose with power in her own hands. Her stability did not come from distance alone. It came from forcing a man who lived behind walls to stand exposed, and from refusing to disappear inside his damage. Dante had to unlearn the survival tactic that built his empire. Control had once made him powerful. Vulnerability made him human, and it cost him more than money ever had. Their life remained complicated. He still had obsessive habits. She still pushed back hard. But there was warmth now. Dante slowly stepped away from the syndicate, while Evelyn turned her pain into writing. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to the high-rise terrace where the first crack had opened. The terrace was empty now, like the empire he had left behind. When Evelyn asked what he thought about when he remembered the beginning, Dante did not hide. He said he thought every day about what he had done to her. He regretted breaking her, but not the life they found after the wreckage. She leaned into him, feeling the cold air and the steady warmth of his body beside her. Once she had believed loving a powerful man would protect her from harm. Now she knew better. Love did not cancel chaos. It only mattered when both people were willing to face it honestly. Through everything she endured, Evelyn learned how to protect herself. She learned to demand the truth, leave when love became a cage, and choose herself over comforting lies. When she returned to Dante, she did not return blindly. She returned with conditions, scars, and the strength to walk away again, if he ever confused love with control. He was still learning vulnerability. She was still rebuilding trust. They were never a perfect love story. They were volatile, scarred, and painfully real. And if their life proved anything, it was this: forgiveness is not what saves love, truth is.